No one expected Canada to be the one to bring America's auto empire to its knees, but that's exactly what just happened. First came the tariffs, then came the retaliation. Now Tesla, Ford, and General Motors aren't just losing money, they're fighting for survival. While the media obsessed over trade talks and political headlines, Canada was quietly executing a ruthless, precision strike. How did Canada pull this off so fast? What's happening? On a seemingly ordinary morning in Washington, blindsided Washington and Wall Street alike. This wasn't a trade dispute. It was an economic power play, and the fallout is rewriting the future of the global auto industry. President Donald Trump announced a sudden and staggering 25% tariff on Canadian auto imports. There were no warnings, no diplomatic back channels, no last-minute negotiations. Just a cold, calculated decree that would send shockwaves through two of the largest trading partners in the world. For decades, the relationship between Canada and the United States had been built on cross-border trade and mutual economic growth. But with one announcement, that relationship was shattered. Publicly, the Trump administration framed the move as a matter of national security. They claimed the tariffs were necessary to protect American jobs, shield domestic manufacturers, and reduce trade deficits. But behind the curtain, the motive was far more ruthless. This was not about safety, it was about leverage. Trump's team knew that the Canadian economy was deeply intertwined with American automotive demand. By targeting Canadian auto exports, they believed they could force Ottawa to the negotiating table and extract trade concessions that would tilt the balance of power permanently in America's favor. The shock in Canada was immediate and visceral. Within hours, economists were forecasting billions of dollars in potential losses. Automotive workers from Ontario to Alberta began to fear for their jobs. Canadian political leaders, blindsided by the move, scrambled to understand how an ally had become an adversary overnight. This wasn't just about tariffs, it was about survival. Every year, over $300 billion in goods flow between the United States and Canada, much of it connected to the auto industry. Suddenly, that flow was under threat. The Canadian dollar dipped in international markets. Investment forecasts were revised downward. Trade associations warned that the tariffs' impact would ripple far beyond car prices. It would affect metals, labor, and entire communities dependent on the auto trade. Truck drivers, factory workers, small-town grocers, and school teachers all now stood on shaky economic ground. But Canada's counterattack would be far more precise and devastating. And if you're starting to realize how deep this story actually goes, now's the perfect time to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel. Canada's retaliation. Ottawa didn't retaliate blindly. They aimed right for America's corporate heart. Prime Minister Mark Carney's cabinet gathered in an emergency session. They knew they couldn't respond with scattered or symbolic measures. They had to make it hurt where it counted the most. So instead of matching the tariff blow for blow, they chose to apply pressure at America's deepest economic pressure points. Bourbon, Florida orange juice, and most importantly, electric vehicles. This was not random. Each target was selected for maximum political and economic impact. Bourbon tariffs would anger voters in Kentucky, the home state of powerful Senate leader Mitch McConnell. Orange juice tariffs would inflame Florida, a key swing state in any presidential election. But the masterstroke was the assault on electric vehicles. Canada's trade measures zeroed in on Tesla, Ford, and General Motors. Not only three iconic American automakers, but three companies deeply reliant on the Canadian market and supply chains. Tesla was America's crown jewel in electric vehicle technology. Ford and GM were the old guard of Detroit's automotive empire. Together, they symbolized American industrial strength and future innovation. By targeting these companies, Canada wasn't just retaliating, they were undermining America's claim to economic supremacy. And they knew it. The tariffs on electric vehicles created immediate chaos. Dealerships in Canada reported plummeting orders. Cross-border logistics became a nightmare as new duties slowed the flow of vehicles and parts. American executives scrambled to adjust production forecasts. Ottawa's move sent an unmistakable message to Washington. If you strike at us, we will strike back with precision. It wasn't just about dollars and cents. It was about dignity, about economic sovereignty. Canadian officials made clear that they were done being collateral damage in Washington's political battles. They would protect their industries, their workers, and their future, even if it meant economic warfare. But Canada wasn't done. They had one more devastating move to make: the EV rebate freeze. Tesla thought it could manipulate the system, until Canada shut the door. As the tariff battle escalated, Ottawa delivered a blow that Tesla's leadership never saw coming. The Canadian government announced an immediate freeze on Tesla's participation in its multi-million-dollar electric vehicle rebate program. Overnight, Tesla's Canadian customers lost access to lucrative incentives that had helped make the company's vehicles affordable north of the border. The move wasn't just economic, it was personal. Behind the scenes, Canadian officials launched a formal investigation into Tesla's aggressive use of the rebate system. The numbers were staggering. In a single weekend, Tesla had applied for more than 8,000 rebates, raising red flags across multiple agencies. Critics argued that Tesla had gamed the system, exploiting Canadian taxpayers while flooding the market and squeezing out domestic automakers. The backlash had been brewing for years. Tesla had previously manipulated Canada's rebate system by introducing a stripped-down, artificially priced model to qualify for incentives, even though that model was rarely purchased. When Ottawa tightened eligibility rules, Tesla found new ways to flood the system with applications. To Canadian officials, this wasn't innovation. It was exploitation. The financial fallout was swift. Tesla's projected Canadian sales cratered overnight. Investors panicked as the company's stock slid on news of the investigation. Canadian media coverage hammered Tesla's public image, framing the company as a foreign predator, feeding off taxpayer money. Elon Musk's tweets defending the company only poured fuel on the fire. The public relations disaster compounded Tesla's growing list of political enemies, and for the first time, Musk's electric empire looked vulnerable on the North American stage. Analysts warned that the rebate freeze could trigger a chain reaction, damaging Tesla's long-term market position in Canada and beyond. And while Tesla reeled, Ford was about to face its own collapse. Ford's factory nightmare. As Canada's retaliation took effect, Ford's tightly integrated cross-border supply chains began to unravel. For decades, the company's factories in Michigan and Ohio had depended on a seamless flow of Canadian parts and labor. That flow is now broken. Shipments that once arrived in 48 hours were delayed for weeks. Critical components sat idle at border crossings, tangled in red tape and new tariff costs. Assembly lines in Dearborn, Toledo, and Flat Rock ground to a halt as workers stood idle, waiting for parts that never came. Ford's leadership scrambled to reroute supply chains, but the damage was done. The human cost was immediate. Thousands of factory workers were furloughed with no clear timeline for return. Dealerships across the Midwest reported massive shortages of new vehicles. Inventory piled up while customers walked away, unwilling to pay higher prices, driven by tariffs and production delays. Entire towns dependent on Ford's payroll felt the squeeze. Local economies buckled under the weight. Grocery stores, diners, hardware shops, businesses that had thrived on Ford worker paychecks began closing their doors. School budgets shrank as tax revenue disappeared. Mortgage defaults ticked upward in once thriving auto trades. The ripple effects didn't stop there. Suppliers to Ford, many of them small businesses, found themselves unable to weather the storm. Contracts were canceled. Layoffs multiplied. The cascading collapse of Ford's production network became a cautionary tale of how quickly a trade war could devastate entire communities. Ford's leadership issued desperate statements, pleading for Washington to reverse course. But their warnings fell on deaf ears. The political machinery that had triggered this disaster showed no signs of slowing down. But Ford's crisis was nothing compared to what General Motors was facing. General Motors' collapse. For over half a century, GM had mastered the delicate balance of manufacturing vehicles across the United States and Canada. The entire North American auto ecosystem relied on this intricate, synchronized model. Parts manufactured in Ontario would be shipped overnight to Michigan. Engines assembled in Ohio would power vehicles finished in Oshawa. It was a seamless ballet of industrial cooperation. But in the blink of an eye, that ballet became a disaster. When Washington imposed its 25% tariffs on Canadian auto imports, the fragile system collapsed. What was once a well-oiled machine of cross-border manufacturing turned into a bureaucratic nightmare. GM's production model, built on free-flowing trade, was shattered. Canadian suppliers now faced prohibitively high costs to ship parts to GM's American plants. Border delays stretched from hours to days. Essential components
I was built to last when the webs are weaving. I could change the past with all I'm achieving. Got my foot on the gas, never stop competing. If you break like glass, then this life's gonna end.
I wanna be the best in the game, invest in my name. Check no restraints, I'm obsessed with the pain. I ingest, I retain, assess and I change. Possessed by the thought I'll be free one day from society's restraints. Money, clout and fame, mud, disease, a plague. We all love to hate, have to play the game, have to make a name. All our insecurities are on display. This is war with the enemy, think that it was meant to be. Living in a time where disease is on every screen. I won't let them fester me, I know most are festering. Negativity is a plague for the mentally weak. No mercy, all I got is working. Never stop searching, never quench the thirsty. I'm toxic and psychotic with this logic, you can't stop it. It's been chronic since I was a boy, so neurotic and chaotic. Go! To last with the webs I'm weaving. I could change the past with all I'm achieving. Got my foot on gas, never stop competing. If you break like glass, then this life's gonna eat 'em. Make mistakes real fast, then you learn how to beat 'em. If you take off the cast, you can see all the healing. If the pain's in the past, move on from the grave and put your foot on the gas. No, never stop competing, yeah. I've been doing this, I'm on it. I just wanna be iconic. Sipping on a gin and tonic, got me going off when I'm on this topic, yeah. If I ever play, I want it. You know that I'm always honest. Stay away from those who are toxic. Keep 'em out your face, no way, you don't want it, yeah. Don't try to drain my energy. The enemy is everything. It's mentally, unhealthily, spreading like a rare disease. But I won't let it get to me. I don't need your therapy. I can leave a legacy of leading by intensity. Come on, we can fight this. Freedom is priceless. Spread just like a virus. Living in a crisis. Do you feel courageous? Do you seek greatness? Trust me, you can take it. Go on and take your aim. I was built to last with the webs I'm weaving. I could change the past with all I'm achieving. Got my foot on gas, never stop competing. If you break like glass, then this life's gonna eat 'em. Make mistakes real fast, then you learn how to beat 'em. If you take off the cast, you can see all the healing. If the pain's in the past, move on from the grave and put your foot on the gas. No, never stop competing, yeah.
to explain why their communities had become collateral damage in an economic war they didn't start. Families who had built their lives around stable auto industry paychecks now faced eviction, bankruptcy, and the looming threat of long-term unemployment. The workers' revolt spread quickly. Cross-border solidarity protests emerged, with American and Canadian workers marching together against the political and corporate leaders they blamed for their suffering. For the first time in decades, the phrase "class war" began to surface in headlines, but the workers weren't the only ones fighting. The politicians were tearing themselves apart too. The political firestorm. This wasn't about tariffs anymore. It was about political survival. As the economic devastation spread, the trade war between the United States and Canada triggered an all-out political firestorm. In Washington, President Donald Trump's administration faced mounting backlash. The tariffs that were supposed to protect American jobs had instead unleashed chaos in key battleground states. In Michigan, Ohio, and Pennsylvania, voters who had backed Trump in the last election flooded town hall meetings, demanding an end to the trade war. Republican lawmakers in Congress began to break ranks, warning that the president's trade policies were alienating the very workers who had carried him to victory. In Canada, Prime Minister Mark Carney faced his own crisis. What began as a bold stand against American aggression now threatened his political career. Opposition parties accused him of mismanaging the conflict and failing to protect Canadian jobs. Protests erupted outside Parliament in Ottawa, with signs reading, "End the tariffs," and "Workers deserve better." The political fallout wasn't limited to North America. European trade officials began questioning the stability of transatlantic trade agreements. Asian markets reacted to the turmoil by revising their investment strategies. Global financial analysts warned that the North American trade war could trigger a broader recession. Desperate to contain the damage, both Trump and Carney's administrations dispatched teams of negotiators to attempt back-channel talks. But by now the wounds were too deep. Neither leader wanted to appear weak by backing down first. And while the politicians fought, Canada held one more card that could break the U.S. economy: America's hidden weakness. Canada controlled something far more powerful than car parts: energy. As the tariff battle escalated and the political crisis deepened, Canadian officials quietly prepared their most dangerous countermeasure yet: restricting the flow of oil, natural gas, and electricity to the United States. Few Americans realized how much their energy security depended on their northern neighbor. Nearly 20% of the crude oil consumed in the United States came from Canada. Several northern states relied heavily on Canadian electricity exports to power their grids during winter months. Natural gas pipelines ran across the border like arteries, keeping homes heated and industries running. Ottawa's threat wasn't announced in a press conference. It didn't make front-page headlines. Instead, quiet signals were sent to Washington. If the tariffs continued, Canada would consider reassessing its energy exports. The message was clear. Canada wouldn't pull the plug immediately, but they could. The mere possibility sent shivers through Wall Street and Capitol Hill. Economists warned that even a temporary suspension of Canadian oil exports would double gas prices overnight. A winter blackout in the Midwest could trigger humanitarian and economic disaster. The American energy market was built on the assumption that Canadian resources would always be available. That assumption was now in question. In private meetings, American energy executives begged the Trump administration to resolve the trade dispute before it spiraled further. State governors warned of political fallout if heating bills spiked in the middle of winter. Congressional hearings erupted with testimony from energy experts predicting long-term damage to America's energy infrastructure. But as North America descended into chaos, the rest of the world was watching and ready to move in. When investors turned on the auto industry, the trade war didn't just hit factories. It hit the markets like a bomb. As tariffs and counter-tariffs ricocheted across North America, Wall Street's confidence in the American auto industry collapsed in real time. Investors who once viewed Tesla, Ford, and General Motors as rock-solid anchors of American industry suddenly saw nothing but red flags. On trading floors in New York, brokers and analysts watched in horror as the value of America's biggest automakers plummeted day after day. The downward spiral began with a whisper: early warnings from economists that the tariffs would inflate production costs and shrink profit margins. But it didn't stay quiet for long. Within a matter of weeks, Tesla's share price dipped by double digits, followed swiftly by Ford and General Motors. Panic set in like a contagion. Institutional investors, pension funds, and even retail traders began dumping auto stocks in droves, unwilling to hold on as the trade war escalated. Without an end in sight, for decades, Wall Street had treated the American auto sector as a dependable investment, a safe, mature industry that weathered economic storms. But this was different. This wasn't a market correction. It was a systemic threat. The tariffs and Canada's ruthless countermeasures weren't just squeezing profits. They were undermining the entire structure of North American auto production. Behind closed doors, hedge fund managers and corporate boards held frantic meetings. Risk models were shredded and rewritten. Forecasts that once projected steady growth turned into predictions of mass layoffs, factory shutdowns, and permanent market shrinkage. The sell-off accelerated, dragging down related sectors: auto parts manufacturers, logistics companies, and even tech firms with automotive partnerships all saw their valuations sink. The panic spread beyond the United States and Canada. Global markets reacted violently as the trade war threatened to destabilize one of the world's most lucrative industries. European and Asian investors grew jittery, watching American automakers bleed billions of dollars in market value. The media toward Chinese brands, not just because they were cheaper, but because they were available. Beijing didn't stop there. Behind the scenes, China struck new trade deals with Canada. While Washington lectured Ottawa and imposed economic penalties, Chinese diplomats and business leaders courted Canadian officials. Agreements were signed to secure lithium, nickel, and cobalt exports, the very resources America's automakers were struggling to access. The irony was brutal. While American politicians raged about trade deficits and economic threats, China was quietly replacing the very companies they claimed to protect. Tesla, Ford, and General Motors watched as their global market share eroded, not from innovation or competition, but from their own government's political gambit. Chinese investment flowed into Canadian ports, mining operations, and transportation infrastructure. New partnerships allowed Beijing to bypass American tariffs entirely, strengthening their grip on the global electric vehicle supply chain. By the time American analysts realized what was happening, it was too late. China wasn't just competing, they were winning. And China wasn't the only one moving in. The old powers of Europe were ready to pounce. Europe's economic offensive. The European Union didn't stay neutral. They seized their moment. As North America's trade war scorched the earth, European automakers saw an opening and moved swiftly to fill the void. Germany's Volkswagen Group, France's Renault, and Sweden's Volvo all pivoted their global strategies. They accelerated electric vehicle production, slashed prices, and aggressively pursued new markets. Consumers in Canada, burned by the chaos of American tariffs, began turning to European models that arrived without the baggage of trade war disruptions. The European Union's political leaders joined the offensive. Trade envoys fanned out across Ottawa, negotiating new trade agreements designed to sideline American automakers. Tariff-free access, favorable terms for European vehicle imports, and joint ventures with Canadian suppliers became the new norm. In boardrooms across Europe, executives toasted their good fortune. Years of playing second fiddle to Detroit's Big Three and Tesla were suddenly over. North America's trade war had done what decades of competition could not. It had opened the door for Europe to dominate the global automotive market. The shift wasn't just economic, it was cultural and strategic. Canada, once tethered to American auto production, began deepening its economic ties with Europe. Canadian consumers, long loyal to American brands, now flooded showrooms in Toronto, Montreal, and Vancouver to buy Volkswagens, Peugeots, and Volvos. Meanwhile, American automakers found themselves locked out. Their factories stood silent. Their dealerships sat empty. Their global reputation lay in ruins. But the true damage wasn't in boardrooms. It was in everyday lives. Tesla's fall? Tesla wasn't defeated by competitors. It was destroyed by politics. For over a decade, Tesla stood as the symbol of the electric vehicle revolution. A company that defined the future of transportation and technology. The trade war, one calculated power move to dismantle what Elon Musk had spent years building. Tesla's fall was not the result of technological failure or consumer disinterest. It was engineered in government chambers and economic battlefields. Once Canada froze Tesla's multi-million-dollar electric vehicle subsidies and shut the door on its aggressive rebate strategy, the company's foothold in North America began to crumble. What started as a regional setback soon snowballed into a global crisis. blistering. For consumers, the collapse of North America's auto industry meant one thing: rising prices. And not just for cars. As American automakers weakened and foreign competition tightened its grip, car prices soared. Affordable options vanished from dealerships. Leasing and financing terms became stricter. Maintenance costs climbed as parts grew scarce, and the dream of owning a reliable, reasonably priced vehicle drifted further out of reach for millions of families. But it didn't stop at the dealership. The death of America's auto giants triggered a chain reaction across the broader economy. Job losses in auto towns gutted local businesses overnight. Tax revenues dried up, crippling public services like schools, hospitals, and emergency responders. Middle-class families who once relied on stable factory paychecks were pushed into financial precarity, forced to stretch every dollar just to survive. And while North American consumers struggled to adapt, Chinese and European automakers surged. Build Your Dreams, NIO, Volkswagen, and Renault filled the vacuum left by Tesla, Ford, and GM. Their vehicles flooded global markets at competitive prices, locking North American manufacturers out of the very industry they had built. The United States and Canada, once the backbone of global automotive dominance, watched helplessly as leadership shifted overseas. The trade war may have started as a fight over tariffs, but it ended as an irreversible economic power shift. A shift that would take decades to recover from, if it could be recovered at all. Because once the dust settled, the world realized America's auto empire wasn't defeated by competition. It was destroyed by its own war. So, what do you think? Is this the end of America's auto empire, or just the beginning of something even bigger? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I want to hear from you. And if you want to stay ahead of these game-changing stories, hit subscribe and turn on notifications. The next chapter in this economic war is coming fast, and you won't want to miss it. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video.